base jumpers back in the day used to write a letter that when they went in base jumping would get read. And that's kind of what the military does. They expect bad outcomes, and it's worth it. But we in the outdoor world are like, well, if we're safe enough and do things right and don't act like those people, and then we'll be okay. And I'm being a little bit sarcastic there, but I do think a more realistic appreciation would be better. My name is Will Gadd, and I'm an adventure sports pro athlete, speaker, guide, dad from Canmore, Alberta. I'm 56 years old, and I've been doing adventure sports since before I could walk. My family are climbers, and the funny family story is that my mom only stopped climbing with me when she was pregnant with me, when she could no longer see her feet. And she went into the doctor for her 8-month checkup, and she had this massive burn from doing a Dulfer sits rappel. And the doctor is like, why are you rappelling as an 8-month pregnant woman? And yeah, so that's where I come from. I was out in the mountains before I was alive. As a kid growing up in Calgary, the climbing community had a lot of accidents and fatalities. And the memorial events for those accidents were always at my house. So at least a couple times a year there'd be a wake for some climber that had died. And as a kid I was like, this is awesome. Everybody comes over, gets hammered, and I drink the remainders of the beer bottles. This is great. They were the best parties ever, honestly, legendary parties in Calgary, but it was always for somebody that died. And as a kid you just accept that. You're like, this is how it is. You don't have a choice. It's like, maybe it's like kids in war zones or something. It just is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. Kids have no power. So for me, I just accepted that. I just thought that was normal, that you'd have parties at your house semi-regularly for people who died in the mountains. That was like, people do that, people die, that's how it is. In my early teens, mid-teens was probably when I started thinking more about the consequences of these sports. I started to really notice patterns. Like everybody who was an alpine climber that I knew, if they kept at it long enough, they died. And it was a pretty conscious choice on my part to start pursuing things that had high levels of technical ability, but were in less complex environments. I couldn't articulate it well as a teenager, but I was like, people seem to live longer rock climbing. I'm gonna stick with that. Or ice climbing, it has more hazard, but I still love it, so I'll keep doing that. And it was weird because I thought about this quite consciously at the time and going, yeah, some sports are a lot more dangerous than others, and I am okay with that hazard, but I don't want to do a lot of this big alpine climbing. And then I broke that rule a lot and did a lot of it. First time I had to deal with a fatality in my mountain world, I met up with some guys at the Put-In who were legends in California kayaking, and I was like, I get to paddle with these guys, and my little group was 3 tight friends, and these California guys join our group. They're legends. I'm so stoked. I'm 20 years old. We're paddling with the legends, and bombing down the river. We're speed scouting. It's a very difficult run. Didn't have many descents at that time. It's mostly pretty continuous class 4 or 5 harder drops. So we've got the super strong team. We're bombing down the river, and we're speed scouting, which means the person in front gets to the drop, gets out of their kayak, looks, gives directions to everybody. So I get there, I'm in front, I'm like, it's this janky little drop. It's not serious by high level kayaking standards. It's like a maybe 6-foot little pour over waterfall thing, but it's janky. And I'm like, everybody out, so we all look at it. And my friend Jimmy gets into his boat. And Jimmy is a world-class athlete, Olympic athlete, just a phenomenal, the most talented athlete I've ever known. Anyhow, this guy paddles over, pins vertically, so he's stuck in his kayak. The water's slamming into his back, and he's hanging there, and I can just see him through the tongue of water, and I'm like, oh shit, Jimmy's gonna die. And he's hanging down there like that, and so I go for my rescue gear, and because I'd had a crevasse rescue course at some point in my life, I'm elected to get him out, And so I got my gear, and I'm like, where am I going to set up this thing I've studied once, and somehow Jimmy surfs out sideways and gets out at the drop. And I'm like, holy shit, Jimmy lived, this is magic. And one of the California legends gets in his boat. And I'm looking at the guy, I'm 20, he's old, he's 30. Right? And I'm looking at him and I'm like, this is bad. Like, this guy should not be doing this. But he's also like the legend and I'm like the 20-year-old kid. So I'm like, hey, you know, the best I could come up with at that point in my life was Jimmy almost died. There's no way in hell I would run that drop. Like, and he just looks at me and he's like, I got this. And paddles off, pins vertically. And so now he's in the water and he's pinned vertically, and you know, I've got to come up with some kind of rescue scenario. So I'm trying to do that, and I tried a bunch of different things, and was eventually able to set up a system to get him out. And you know, he's 5 or 6 minutes after he pinned, I was trying to push him up. I could actually stand on a rock underneath this waterfall, and he could still grab my hand. But when I finally figured out a rescue system with my friends to get him out, he wasn't breathing. And we couldn't get him breathing, doing CPR on this rock on this beautiful California day. And Jimmy and I, because we were the stronger paddlers in the group, are elected to paddle out and start a rescue. And I go back in with the rescue team at night. So now I've been on the go for like 24 hours straight, and I have to hike back into this deep, deep, deep canyon in California. And I finally get ahead of the rescue team. We hit the riverbed, and they can't move in that terrain. You know, I've just spent a lot of my life in that terrain. I can move. And so I'm like, I'll see you there. It's like a mile upstream, give or take. I'll see you there. I'm hallucinating the whole time that Andrew, who I didn't think was going to be alive, is going to like jump over a rock and you know, try to kill me because I couldn't save him. You know, I'm fucked up mentally. And finally I get to where the accident had happened, and I can't, my headlamp's too weak to see if Andrew's still on the rock or not. And so I'm pretty messed up, and I'm trying to like get out to the rock, and then I'm like, well, where are my friends? Because they have to get out too, and it's cold, and it's like they're gonna be suffering. And finally the rescue team catches up, and I'm sitting there on this rock beside the river all night, like just a mess. And then in the morning I've got to like swim out there because I'm the only one that knows how to do that, and help get him into a bag, and then the machine comes and it's done, and you know, I hike back out. And Monday morning I'm at school. Like, I'm sitting at a desk trying to learn about something. I don't remember very much of that year, honestly. And I didn't deal with that at all well. You know, I'd say I've been doing mountain sports seriously now for at least 40 years. And in that time, I have lost 26 friends, give or take, that I've drank beers with and gone out into the mountains with and had trips with. And you know, these are people that I would like be really excited to see in any airport in the world if I ran into them. And that number's not wildly out of line with people who do these sports for a long time. And there's that continual load of like, when's the next call going to come? You know, who's going in next? And because it's going to happen. And that's one part of this is for me, I do feel that continual sense of, I wouldn't call it dread, but I know it's coming. And I've gotten better at dealing with those calls over the years. I'm not angry about them anymore. I used to be angry. Now I'm like, okay, this happens, and how can I help, or at least get out of the way of the people who are helping? So that's one part of this for me, and I think long term, that's why people quit these mountain sports. I've had a number of friends who quit mountain sports because they just simply can't handle the carnage. And if I ever quit these sports, it's not going to be because I'm bored of the mountains. It's going to be because I just don't want to get calls anymore. And then as far as these incidents, you know, it's every time I have an incident, whether it's a rescue, I've responded to a lot of accidents in the mountains, and I go home and I think, is this really worth it? Because it's not. This stuff is not worth it on any individual level, me included. You know, if I crash my paraglider tomorrow, obviously that day wasn't worth it. And so I wrestle with that. I wouldn't say continually, but it's like, do I really need to do this? And of course the answer is no, I don't need to do it. But it also is the way that I do find meaning, and I have to have that answer. I have to sit there, and sometimes I don't do anything that's higher risk in the mountains for, you know, anywhere from a year to whatever time after one of these incidents. I have to sit there and figure out, is this still worth it or not? I think if we go into these sports with the understanding of what may be on the other side, good and bad, then we tend to blame ourselves less when there are incidents and accidents. Like that self-blame and self-hatred is really strong. And if we can go into it and go, right, people do make mistakes, and in my culture people recognize that people make mistakes, then it helps a little bit on the backside. It also helps during the day that you're out there. It's like, wow, really low probability things do happen. And not just may, but will. This is a critical thing to understand. Things will go wrong. And so in our decision making today, how can we use that to do better? I'm working on a book called Surviving and Thriving in High Hazard Environments. And some of it's from the corporate side of things. Like I've got this great interview with the person who ran occupational health and safety for ExxonMobil. This guy is good at it. But I've also done interviews with people who worked in other high hazardous environments, including a guy who did a whole lot of really dangerous and difficult things in foreign countries for governments. It's a complicated situation. But that guy used a term that I thought was really interesting. And he says sometimes the juice is worth the squeeze. So the military knows that if they send 15 people in to do something really dangerous, like some of them will die. They know that. And they go, okay, this is worth it. We're gonna do this. And the guys who are going to do that job, they know that. They're going in there with that expectation. I think we in the outdoor industry should probably ask ourselves, is the juice worth the squeeze? And is the juice worth it? That day, that week, that month, that year, for that life? It's a good question. And I think everybody should have an answer.
A lot of the objective risks in ski touring are like your avalanche risk, there's the weather, there's the type of terrain that you're going into, and all of them combined create, a level of uncertainty that you're never going to be able to eliminate. And so an effect on the weather in the snowpack is going to be something that we need to consider. And then also the type of terrain. So it's sort of like looking at all. I'm sorry, do you want me to stop?
No, we're just gonna. Whenever you're ready.
All right. My name is Madeleine, and I was born in Nelson, BC, and now I'm living in Revelstoke. I work as a ski guide in the winter and as a hiking guide in the summertime. And I also work for the training and assessment program as an instructor and examiner. I grew up skiing and was very fortunate to have a family that supported that, as well as cross-country skiing. I really loved how it made me feel to be kind of connecting with something a lot bigger than myself. And I followed that seed through a lot of different avenues of not only trying to develop my own skills, but then seeking out those opportunities to share whatever experience I had with others. So a group of friends and I were at a cabin in the southern Selkirks. We were going to be there for about 5 days. We had come in the day before and we had sort of ski toured around. We'd looked at the avalanche hazard forecast for the time we were going to be there. It was at moderate. We did a bunch of snowpack tests and we were pretty happy with the results that we'd found, thinking that things were more stable than we had anticipated based on the several tests we'd done. The following day was the best weather window, so kind of more blue skies and not a lot of wind, and temperatures were relatively stable. And so we thought, okay, if we want to make the most of this day, then let's do kind of a bigger circuit. And we were going to ski this kind of bit of a steeper face as our kind of first run. And because I was a little concerned about things heating up during the day because it was March, I decided to kind of start skiing before everyone had arrived at the skins off point. I think I had kind of an uneasy feeling just because it was a bit of a bigger feature, and I certainly don't consider myself a steep skier, but there was that hesitation of anytime you're doing something a little different. There's a bit of like nervous excitement and anticipation. And so that was the feeling I was really experiencing at the beginning. And as soon as I kind of just started skiing, which is a natural feeling for me, my emotions kind of just started like becoming a little more regulated. And then in terms of what I felt that was different, I can't even say what it was, whether it was like a whoomp or a sound or a sensation, but it just, something was different, and I happened to look up and see the crack. I felt ashamed. I felt like I had made the worst decision that I could have, like just knowing that the decision I'd made was wrong, because now I was experiencing this outcome. And I felt like I was, just like letting down my entire community, the whole group of, trying to have done everything right and like still totally fucked it up. And that was, so there was like it wasn't fear as first so much as disappointment almost. And that was, really an interesting realization. And then as I was moving down, almost just like this surrender of like, there's really nothing I can do at this point. And all the kind of information about, you have to swim or like try to fight the avalanche was just like completely thrown out the window. There was nothing, like I couldn't really move. My backpack got ripped off of me, like my skis, I didn't know where they were either. And that was, it was pretty obvious I wasn't gonna be able to like physically get myself out of this situation. And so I remember kind of just thinking, you know what, I've lived a pretty good life so far, and if this is the way I go, then this is the way I go. The feeling of shame really gets triggered when we have an expectation of ourselves or a perceived expectation that others have of us, and we're not meeting it for whatever reason. At least that's been my experience. And also the kind of thought that like we should have known, or we should be able to control an outcome, or we should X, Y, Z. And so the feeling of shame was really around like, I don't have what it takes to kind of like be in these places, because obviously I can't make good decisions if this is the outcome. And so having that experience, especially in a place that has for so long been a place of like fun and enjoyment and, success, for lack of a better word, basically experiencing the worst case scenario felt like a big failure. I think understanding the difference between guilt and shame is really important, because guilt is like, I've done something wrong, I can learn and I can keep progressing and move forward. Whereas shame is like, I am wrong or I don't belong, and nothing I do is going to change that. And in our community, when we are constantly questioning other people's decisions, at a certain point, it's going to become or feel very personal, that you're not just questioning a decision, you're kind of questioning who they are and their right to belong in the community. Fortunately, my friend community was really supportive, and like, even if some of them were questioning the decision or why we were there, what was going on, there was support to kind of redirect some of that questioning to like, let's learn from it, but let's not be pointing the finger. And even after the incident, I felt really strongly that it was important to share what had happened, because to me, the idea of having this incident help others learn was more important than protecting my sense of like shame or identity or reputation. And by having shared like my own vulnerability, it almost invited this opportunity for other folks to come to me and say like, yeah, I had a similar experience. And it wasn't that we necessarily had to talk about details or decisions, but almost just that recognition of like, wow, we've both been hurt or kind of traumatized in a similar way, and here we are moving through it in our own ways. And so to understand that these people I looked up to, people that I saw as like very competent mountain professionals, also had stories of having, made mistakes or having an outcome that was different than what they anticipated, was kind of validating that it's like, yeah, you can have these experiences, but it doesn't mean you're a terrible outdoors person or that you're never going to belong again.
As you look in that book, it was both this amazing trip, such a great place, and then also like just a scene of horror. Yeah. My name is Jerry Isaak. I'm an associate teaching professor at Thompson Rivers University. I'm one of the lucky people that get to both play outside and work with college students in the outdoors. I found out about the Arctic expedition, and at the time the program was called British Schools Exploring Society. I found out about that while I was a graduate student at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. I wanted to go up into the Arctic and travel there. And then, as you could tell by where I work as a career, I love working with young people in the outdoors. So it just seemed like just a wonderful opportunity. So the actual expedition took place July 22nd to August 15th in 2011. Those were the intended dates. So our plan was we would take a boat from the main town, Longyearbyen, to the base camp along the fjord, and then we would do shorter trips from there. Yeah, so on August 3rd, my group was a few kilometers up the fjord. We were just ending a 3 or 4 day tour, and we're about to come back on the 4th. We had a difficult day the previous night. Like on the 3rd, was a bit of snow, a bit of rain, poor visibility. So it was kind of a rough day and morning. When we woke on the 4th, it was sunny, bluebird, and we were able to continue on our tour, and we were going places that we hadn't been before. So there was some sense of exploration. For us, it would have been about midday that we got back at the advanced base camp. It was shortly after lunch. And we were met there by the chief leader of the expedition. He told us that polar bear had attacked one of the other teams, and that one of the participants, Horatio Chappell, was killed in the attack, and that several other people were badly hurt, including 2 other leaders. And the students were able to initiate a rescue using the satellite phone. Everyone who was present at that time was evacuated, and the people who were seriously injured had been taken to Tromsø, to the nearest mainland hospital. It's completely surreal. I remember that. it doesn't seem real or possible. And I think perhaps maybe there was some protection psychologically by just thinking about tasks and not the future yet. But I remember thinking about the people that were there, some of them as young as 16, and how to lead or help or support them, wondering if I'm struggling to process this, what must they be thinking? And I remember at that point, beginning to feel inadequate or inadequately prepared to care for those students. At that moment, all of the kind of skills that I had to contribute, I felt were gone. No one needed to learn how to cross a glacier anymore or summit a mountain or navigate in a whiteout. We were going back to the base camp and we were going to sit tight. Like it felt like this is obviously a really difficult and traumatic event that has taken place. And I remember just struggling to think of like, what can we do to help these young people? What I learned was that the most important thing that we can do is to care for each other as human beings in relationship with one another. We don't need to do a big crisis debrief, or you don't need to have special skills or training. In the immediate aftermath, your skills, the things that you can offer, are being human to one another. So that means starting at the bottom and making sure people have kind of the basic needs met. Make sure that they're warm, make sure that they've had something to eat. We immediately think about their psychological health, and that's part of it, but we're not going to be able to affect those things until we've got some of those basic needs met. Then it's space to allow people to talk or not talk, and to, I think, just to interact and to the best way I can think of it is be human to one another, be kind and caring. It doesn't take special skills to do those things. I don't think it's always helpful to kind of prod or dig to kind of force someone to talk about something they're maybe not quite ready to talk about, but certainly being willing to be there and listen is important. I think we need to give space for people to have kind of fluctuations of feelings, because it's going to be all over the map. And how do we support each other? That's going to be, I think, different in every case. Time together, doing things that energize you, make you happy, but not any expectations. I think that probably would be one of the things that would be detrimental to someone's health and recovery. Is like, well, we're going to talk and they're going to cry, but maybe they don't. Or an expectation that someone might be very grateful for you for bringing a meal over or something. You can't be doing it for that. Like someone might be a jerk to you consistently for a time. But I think being there and being human for someone in that case means pressing through that if you're truly friends with them. Pressing through and recognizing that might be part of them working through things. The moment that is so immediate to me is the kind of like the split of the before and after, which is before I knew what happened and then after, and there was no going back. That's immediate. And I can place myself at that scene, hearing those words, and it felt like it was torn and you could never put it back together. That part was immediate. And that's something that sticks with me. And that's, I think, a huge part of what's changed in my relationship to risk. So understanding the finality of it in a way that is immediate, and that I can go back to that moment, and I know that you can be adventuring in the outdoors, and there can be a moment when nothing will ever be the same again. That's something that changes your relationship to risk and relationship to bringing people in these places.
we're doing CPR and hoping a helicopter shows up shortly thereafter, and it's not. And I gotta stand there and do this, and then I ride down in the truck with his wife, and that one had a huge impact on me. And again, I went back to work on Monday, right? Like, I'm fine, going back to work.
Yeah, I wish I could have just gone to the pub with the other leaders and just be together. Not that you're necessarily talking about the expedition even, but just being together. That was something I know I wanted.
Just that lack of support for myself within those first even couple weeks, it's like I'm still feeling the repercussions today.
My name's Sarah Hueniken. I'm a full ACMG Alpine guide for the past 25 years here in Canmore, and I'm the executive director and co-founder of the Mountain Muskox. The Mountain Muskox began, I would say, in part due to a critical incident that I was part of 5 years ago. After that incident, I started to see a therapist here in Canmore, and she was amazing, and she saw a lot of people post-mountain accident, so she was quite aware of kind of how to deal with what I was going through. And after numerous sessions with her, both I recognized that I was kind of still blocked from, feeling anywhere near to normal again. And she also recognized that she's dealt with a lot of people in this community that have experienced something similar to myself, and thought that maybe by putting us together, some of the healing might happen a bit faster and easier for me.
Okay, cultural competency, take 2. Okay, so cultural competency is if we have a shared lived experience, that we're going to have a better chance at connecting, and the better chance that we have at connecting, the more impactful the therapeutic support is going to be. So when someone comes into counseling and they want to talk about avalanche terrain because they're telling a story that has terminology and language that's connected to avalanche terrain, if they have to explain that to their therapist, that's a lot of time and energy, and maybe prevents them from being able to connect.
Interestingly enough, when you come to a meeting, you rarely actually discuss your accident. There's a hard and fast code where you can say no to anything. It's more that everyone there understands that you've experienced something similar to them, and that what led up to it, and then that present moment and the aftermath, is quite unique to mountain communities. And it's also all the same for everyone. Everyone went out that day thinking they're gonna have a fabulous day in the mountains, because that's why we go out there. And then something went super wrong. And then that after effect of knowing that that is preventable in some way. We didn't have to go out into the mountains. We didn't have to do whatever we did that day. And people will question what happened and why that outcome happened. And we're the only ones there to answer that. All of those things are similar with everyone in the circle. Whether we understand what happened is really not important.
Meeting in groups and being able to gather together is so important, because it's the most impactful way for us to feel like we're okay and that we're not alone, is to be in communication with other humans who have experiences like ours. And so meeting in a circle with Mountain Muskox helps offer that. We often have participants say things like, yeah, I didn't even realize what I was feeling until someone else explained how they're doing and what their experience, and then I realized, oh, that's what's going on with me too. Or I thought I was crazy until that other person shared something so similar. And so that factor of feeling not alone in your experience is really at the core of why it's so impactful to get together as a group.
We talk about the healing process after an accident. think anyone who's lost a loved one knows it's never a closed door. But I think in feeling the community that I felt in being part of a muskox circle, feeling that support and feeling that understanding and feeling that, real empathy and compassion for me people wanted me to be my full self again. That really made me want to be that for them as well in some ways. Like, I wanted to be what they wanted me to be again, if that makes sense. And so that was part of the healing process, I suppose, in that community effort. Yeah, I guess I think the more we talk about these accidents, incidents, losses, the more we normalize things. And it allows people in their everyday life to talk about all the little things that they've experienced as well that they probably didn't feel like they could share before, because there is a bit of a feeling in the mountain community like, hey, I need to be a good partner, I need to be a safe partner, people need to trust me, and you do. And so maybe it prevents people from sharing their near misses or sharing the decision making they had that didn't go as planned.
As a counselor, if you could give advice on how you would support a friend or a loved one or someone you know that is going through a hard time. And I know that's a big question.
Yeah, totally.
But if you could touch on that would be
Totally.
great.
Okay. So I'm just going to riff a little bit on ways that people can support someone who's going through a tough time from a counselor's perspective. Number one thing, validate their experience, because they might be feeling a lot of shame about it. And so if we can really step in and say, you know what, it's so normal that you're feeling that way. And I'm so sorry that you're feeling this way, but it's okay. And I really want you to keep telling me what you're experiencing. I'm here to listen to it. Another thing as a support is to check in with our own actual bandwidth for support. It's one thing to say, oh, I really want to help this person, and not necessarily realize that there might be quite a weight that comes with that. And so checking in with yourself before you decide to offer support is really important. And then if you do feel like you have the bandwidth to be in there with them, like just being around them, making them food, helping them with basic needs, because if people have been through a tough time or a traumatic time, usually the first thing to go out the window is basic needs. So supporting with showing up with a vat of soup or taking them out on a walk or taking their dog for a walk. These are things that actually help move the needle for someone having a tough time, more than say, hey, do you want to talk about your trauma? And also don't be afraid to talk about the trauma, because often people who have a difficult experience or thing that's happened in their life, they may not want to talk about it, and that is completely understandable. But they also might feel like by talking about it, they're being a burden to the people in their life. So if we can help them feel okay about the fact that, no, it's okay, I'm here to listen, and it's okay that you tell me these details, then that's a really genuine support that we can offer. The last thing I would say for people being support to folks having a tough time is just making sure that you're not the only one. Make sure that we can build a circle of support around someone having a tough time, and supporting with different kinds of resources, whether that's a counselor or another friend, or again, someone to make meals for them, but really create a circle around them. And that's what muskox is founded on, this idea that in a herd of muskoxen, if there is someone injured or vulnerable, that they put that one in the middle and circle around them to support and defend. And so having that circle of support really is the most important thing that we can do for someone who's hurting.